breakfast on Saturday and Sunday, happy hours every day, 3 to 6 with drink and food specials. We've had the burgers out there. We've had the ribs. They have fish fry Fridays. Always open, always relaxed, always fun. MississippiPub.com. I thought Gilmore
Jim,
was...
here's one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one thing that stood out to me watching the game that you didn't get. I mean, you always kind of look for the great analysis that can happen or the really bad analysis. One thing that stood out to me at halftime, Boomer Esiason was saying, Tom Brady really needs to step it up. He's been bad in this game, and everybody's ignoring that fact. Jared Goff was not good at all in that game. I found that one really hard to comprehend when Goff had 52 yards passing at halftime and Brady had 160. I mean, to me, I don't know if Brady has been put on this pedestal that everybody expects him to have 400 yards every game. That's not him. He's just very good at reading everything that's out there and knowing the situation and being a great heady quarterback. And, he can chuck it up 53 times if he needs to, but he's not afraid to hand it off 30 times in a game if that's what it calls for. So that's one thing I wanted to point out that, a lot of times people look at quarterbacks and say, oh, who's got the most yards or who's got the most touchdowns? In Brady's case, it's just, the guy is the best ever at just playing the position from a heady, smart standpoint.
Yeah, I've always thought that Peyton Manning was probably the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, and I've always thought that Joe Montana was the greatest postseason quarterback I ever saw. There's no way anybody else matches Brady's complete resume over this length of time with this many championships in the free agency era where he's having to kind of invent receivers and throw to guys like Chris Hogan. I don't think there's ever been anything quite like his total career. Montana was brilliant in the postseason. And, and in an era when defenses had a little more ability to mug receivers. But there's just no arguing Brady's total resume. I will say that, I'm sitting next to Mark Craig, who's as old and crusty as anybody in our business. And we're sitting there saying, this is a pretty good day for old guys. Brady at age of 51 and Belichick, I don't know how old he is now, but he is not a young man. And the old guys whipped the young guys in that game.
No doubt about it. To me, another underappreciated aspect, I've heard from a lot of people. We had some friends over watching the game too. And everybody came away from it. Oh, that was a terrible game. And I think it kind of speaks to what the NFL fan has become, which is all about offense and scoring and that. In this game, a lot of it was good defense. I think there were some nerves, especially on the Rams that showed. But the punting, as ridiculous as it sounds, at 3/4 through the game, I'm thinking, who's the MVP in this? And maybe it's a punter, maybe Johnny Hecker if the Rams win. Or it was crazy though. Just all the, I think that game showed all the little things that people may not necessarily care that much about that can help make up a game. Which you hear. Coaches around the league just throw out the cliches about, field position and ball security and all that. And all of that was really big in a game that had hardly any points scored and yet ended up being the largest margin of victory the Patriots have ever had in a Super Bowl, which I thought was a weird stat, but I guess it just shows you how good they are under pressure.
No question about it. Let's wrap up the show by talking about the state of the NFC. And, I think the Chiefs are the favorite to win the Super Bowl next year. We know the Patriots will be a factor in some way as long as Brady is healthy. The NFC is pretty fascinating. The Eagles kind of came out of nowhere and won the Super Bowl last year. This year, the Rams, kind of continue their upward climb under McVay. But the way they played the Super Bowl doesn't inspire a ton of confidence. So let's talk about the NFC. We do want to thank Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, Hoaglund. Insurance, which I take advantage of and Michael Russo takes advantage of, also provides financial services. And the cool thing is, we've known Tony for years now. He's someone you can trust.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all 700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
So where do you think the Vikings rank in the pecking order going into next season, knowing that injuries and all kinds of different factors can change the pecking order? Just at this moment, are the Vikings a Super Bowl contender? Do they have a lot to prove? How do you feel about them right now?
I feel like they have a lot to prove, but certainly could be a Super Bowl contender. And if they can adequately address the offensive line and somehow figure out how to sign either Anthony Barr or Sheldon Richardson, then I think they should be back in the Super Bowl contender conversation. I do have the latest odds that came out right after the Super Bowl, and we'll just take it from the NFC standpoint. The Rams are favored again at 8-1. The Saints are 9-1. Bears 14-1, and Packers and Vikings are 18-1. After that, you've got the Eagles at 20-1. So I think it shows you that they're kind of in the mix, but not a favorite. And that's really where I think they should be. Honestly, I would maybe put the Saints ahead of the Rams. And long term, the Rams are going to have to change the way that their roster is made up once Jared Goff gets into his veteran contract and is no longer on a rookie contract, because it's just simple facts that dramatically changes the payout and the structure of a roster. The Saints have figured out a way to do it with Drew Brees and the Patriots obviously with Tom Brady, both of those being strong earners. But in my mind, if I had to pick a favorite in the NFC right now, I would probably say the Saints. I think the Bears and Rams are right there as well. And, the Vikings and Eagles, in my mind, are probably next and the Packers behind them. So I don't know how you see it, but that's sort of the way I would break it down.
I think the Saints are probably the best team, but we also know that teams that lose in the championship game, not necessarily Super Bowl, in the championship game, seem to have a terrible hangover the next year. And I talk, I've been down in Atlanta all week, heard a lot of players talking about that, how you lose the Super Bowl, at least you got to the Super Bowl and you enjoyed being at the Super Bowl and you got celebrated for being at the Super Bowl and you got to experience everything about the Super Bowl, and then, you just didn't quite win it. But man, you lose the championship game, it seems to take a lot out of teams. And, Sean Payton's been talking about how after losing the championship game, he just locked himself in his house and ate ice cream for 3 days and watched Netflix. It really has an emotional toll. So I don't know that I trust the Saints coming out of a game like that where they feel like they get robbed. There's just a lot of negative emotions around them right now. I'm really wondering if the Bears aren't the next Rams that take the next, that, kind of show that they can operate under a good young coach, and then the next year they take advantage of that experience and make a run next year.
Well, what's going to be interesting with them is, they get Khalil Mack as the season starts, and he's obviously very good. But how much are they able to change that defense, knowing throughout the whole offseason that they've got Mack, and then how much does that change knowing that Vic Fangio is no longer there? So I think those are two key components to the Bears, especially losing their defensive coordinator. That is one thing that I'm really going to be interested to watch, because you have an offensive-minded head coach. How does that defense respond with a new coordinator? And, you have a lot of great elements there. Obviously, Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack, other great linebackers, Roquan Smith. So I do like what the Bears have. And the fact that from an emotional standpoint, the Rams and the Saints both have a lot to deal with. The way that they both did win the Super Bowl, I think that is tough. So the Bears are right there. I still think that the Saints may be angry enough with everything that's happened in their last two playoff runs to try to ensure that doesn't happen again. But they are, and the other thing is they almost have to win now in this next year with Drew Brees, because how long is he really realistically going to be around?
And the Rams have, as you said, they have Goff on a rookie contract. Once he comes off that, he'll be very expensive, assuming they keep him. And they paid Gurley a lot. They paid Sue a lot. They paid Aaron Donald a lot. They're a young team, but their window isn't necessarily that wide open because, if Gurley's not going to stay healthy and he's going to eat up contract, they're not going to be able to pay a lot of their younger players.
And their offensive line, as much as that was celebrated throughout the season, and I think they won some, made-up sponsored award at the end of the year for the best offensive line, Andrew Whitworth could be retiring. John Sullivan certainly isn't a young man in the NFL anymore, and they didn't play well in the Super Bowl as an offensive line. So that is going to be really key to see how that part comes together, just as you would expect watching the Vikings and how do they address their offensive line issues. The Rams could be in as big or more trouble than the Vikings when it comes to offensive line play.
Final thoughts coming up. Once again, if you'd like to advertise with us and reach a large, loyal audience, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. I'll give you my final thought from Atlanta. I like Atlanta. It's a good place. It's a decent place to have a Super Bowl. It is not New Orleans, and they shouldn't ever have it here again because the weather is not guaranteed to be great. And it was just kind of a blah week here. So I always feel like they should have a Super Bowl someplace. Well, New Orleans. They should have every Super Bowl at New Orleans. I know I'm saying that over and over, but it's true. That's why I keep saying it. Your final thought, Tim?
My final thought is, it may have been a blah Super Bowl from Atlanta. I felt like it was kind of a blah Super Bowl overall because you had the Patriots who, as great as they are, and I hate to follow the storyline of, hating on a successful franchise. I don't hate on them, but I just kind of get tired of seeing them time after time. And then you have a Los Angeles / St. Louis money grabbing team that moved and, is now in a market that really doesn't care about them. I found that a little boring and hard to root for. Some people asked me, who do you want to win this one? And I said, frankly, the way things have gone, I want it to be a tie with all kinds of controversy. So and the ratings now are out and they show it. It was the second lowest rated Super Bowl in a long, long time. It might be NFL history that it's the second lowest rated Super Bowl. And when you have a guy like Tony Romo being an analyst that people are looking forward to seeing, and you still have that poor numbers, to me, it shows me it wasn't a matchup that really intrigued a lot of people, and it kind of lived up to it from a general NFL standpoint that loves scoring when you had such a low scoring game as well. So I would look forward to much bigger and better things this next season when it comes to how the Super Bowl plays out and how excited fans can get about it.
Yeah, this is what two of the most unlikable owners in the game. Remember, we were covering a Vikings game in old TCF Bank Stadium, not old TCF, but we were covering it back when the Vikings were playing there while US Bank Stadium was being built. And Stan Kroenke, there's one big bathroom in the press box supposed to serve, hundreds of people. Stan Kroenke had his security guards block everyone else so he could use that bathroom by himself. That's the kind of guy he is.
Well, and also the kind of guy that, has options in St. Louis and a fan base there that loves him. And he's just wanting the money grab out in Los Angeles, knowing full well that the fan base there is not the greatest when it comes to the NFL. I mean, they just have things they would rather be doing than watching and supporting NFL football. So, yeah, I agree with you. Not very lovable owners for sure. And, it wasn't a game that lived up to the hype. I think it would have been a lot better if you would have had an exciting player like Patrick Mahomes representing the AFC. There would have been a lot more storylines with New Orleans as well. McVay certainly made a lot of headlines, but it just wasn't a super entertaining game for anybody that loves to see points.
Agreed. Next show we'll be getting more into Vikings issues, impending free agency, maybe even an early look at the draft. There is always Vikings news, and we tend to find our listenership sometimes even goes up in the off season because you just don't have as many